everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Danny.
And I'm Giacomo.
And this is our 77th episode. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode. It has been a pretty chill couple of weeks here. The weather is finally turning, which is lovely. We had St. Patrick's Day, which we made a vegan corned beef and cabbage, which we are still eating several days later.
I did everything in my power to not eat the corned beef that Danny made the day before. She's like, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. It was so good. So good.
It's okay. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's a boiled dinner. It's not that exciting, but you got to do it because it's St. Patrick's Day and we live in Massachusetts. And I'm Irish,
right?
As we now know. Thank you, 23andMe. In other news, Giacomo and I are in the process of trying to buy our first home, which is, as anybody who has bought a home before knows, very, very stressful.
It doesn't make it any easier that we are self-employed.
Yeah, it's like a whole nother can of worms. So we're ready. We're ready to do the thing.
The loan officer gets on the phone with me, and he's like just one of those people, kind of like me, actually, for those of you who are familiar with the way that I talk. I just blurt stuff out there, and he just blurted out. He's like, yeah, self-employed people are kind of just a pain to work with, so I don't really know if I want to work with you because I have to do extra work. I'm like, are you really saying this to me right now? Like, I have all of my stuff in order. Can we please see if we can make this thing work? So yeah, we're working on that.
So we'll see what happens. We'll keep you guys posted. Well, I don't think we'll be moving far regardless, but sometime in the next few months we will be moving. But today we have a big topic, so I kind of just want to get right into it because honestly, I don't even know if we're going to be able to do it in one episode. We decided we were going to do a podcast on body image, and we were actually supposed to record this podcast 2 days ago. And I posted in the Muscles by Brussels Facebook group that we were doing this podcast, and if anybody had anything that they wanted us to talk about specifically, and I was blown away by the responses. There were so many responses, and they were like very detailed and nuanced and very specific questions. I was like, oh my God, this is an even bigger hot button topic than I thought that it was. How are we going to talk about all of this in one podcast? And then we had to like back out of the whole structure of how we were going to do this podcast and be like, okay, back to the drawing board. We got to do this over. So that's what we're doing. We're going to try to tackle this enormous topic of body image in one or more podcasts. We'll see how much ground we cover in the next hour.
Yeah, or maybe even do a YouTube series on it or something. I was also blown away by the amount of responses. It doesn't surprise me. We talk about this stuff a lot, but to hear how you, the audience, listeners and watchers, are taking this information and sharing your personal stories about how you struggle with body image, we had to literally just take 3 or 4 days to look over all these questions, think about it, and be like, all right, how are we going to start talking about this? 2 days?
I just said we were supposed to record this 2 days ago. So how could we have taken 3 or 4 days?
Well,
good math. Strong math skills
well.
There. I think the first thing that I think is really important to just say and get out of the way right out of the get-go is I think everybody struggles with their body image. Everybody. Whether they're in shape, out of shape, brand new to fitness, don't give a crap about fitness, or super fit, cream of the crop, top level physique athletes. Everybody struggles with their body image in some capacity. And some of the ways that people were mentioning in the comments were ways that either I haven't personally experienced or I just hadn't thought of it from that perspective. And that's why we had to take some time to think about it. And we might have to stretch this out over more than just one episode. I think a lot of times when people are struggling with their own body image issues, they feel like everybody else has it put together, that nobody else, like, look at that girl. She's so confident. Everything looks so perfect in her life. What would it be like if I woke up and I looked like that person? And chances are really good that that person struggles with their body image too. It is a much more widespread phenomenon than I think people are willing to admit.
Can't speak to everyone's individual struggle, but there are certain parallels and there are certain reasons why I feel that the fitness industry in particular, not just the fitness industry, the lifestyle, fashion industry, there's a lot of different beauty standards and a lot of different ways that we measure our success and whether or not we're taken seriously as people based solely and exclusively on the way that we look. And we're surrounded by it, and it's just getting worse as the years go on.
Right. So I think that the way that society, people treat you differently based on the way you look, there's nothing you can do about that. That's not your own body image. That's a societal thing. I don't think that is something we're really going to be touching upon. Like that's something else. And I did talk about it in my Things No One Tells You About Massive Weight Loss YouTube video. That was one of the things that I noticed was that other people treated me differently. And it's a really, really messed up thing that I noticed that really, quite frankly, changed my view on the entire world, but didn't change anything about my own personal body image, how I felt about myself. It just made me realize, wow, other people value me more now. Yikes, the world is a terrible place. Kind of. But I don't personally want to talk about the way society would view individual people. I want to talk more about how we view ourselves.
Well, I think this is sort of a recurring theme, but I think it's worth leading with the fact that if you are in any way, shape, or form concerned about your body composition, if you're here to focus on your lean muscle and working out and exercising and getting fit, whether you think about your physique or not, at some point it's going to come up. And more likely than not, you've probably gotten into this. You've probably been interested in working on your physique because there's been some sort of focus on your body image. And with that, there's work involved, whether you know it or not. And sometimes you don't realize the work until it's a little too late, and now you're having body image issues.
So yeah, that's the big misconception, is that when somebody gets fit or somebody gets in shape, that they're no longer going to have body image issues. And personally, I have actually found this for many people, not all people, to be the exact opposite. I think before people start getting in shape, it's really easy to say to yourself that you don't really care what you look like. Therefore, you're not doing anything about it. So you don't care what you look like. Meh, I am what I am. Let's carry on. But as soon as you start actually making the effort to get in shape or become fitter, you have to start eating better. You have to start exercising. And once you start doing that, you almost kind of have to admit to yourself, I do care what I look like. And you have to start thinking about that and examining that, or it's just going to jump up in your face at one point or another. Because then when your body isn't doing exactly what you want it to do, which, spoiler alert, it's pretty much never going to, you start to get really down on yourself. Like, man, I'm working so hard and I still look like this. And that person's not working half as hard as I am, but they look way better than I do. At the end of the day, I think a huge portion of our own body image issues comes down to comparing yourself to somebody else. I feel like I could sum this entire topic up just like that. Stop comparing yourself to other people. You're not them. They're not you. You're your own person. Period. Full stop. And I think a long time ago, this was a lot easier to do. It was easier to avoid comparing your body to other people's bodies. Now, I feel like it's almost impossible to avoid it. Long ago, you didn't really see other people's bodies very often, I guess, unless you lived in a beach town or Miami or something like that. You didn't just constantly see people in their bikinis. You certainly didn't see people in their underwear very often. People would get ready for beach season, but you just didn't see it very often. You would see it in movies or in magazines, but you could very easily say to yourself, that person is a celebrity. That person is a model. So it would be silly for me to hold myself to those standards because I am not an actress or a model. But now, with social media and the internet in general, I feel like the entire tide has shifted. You can go online and, if you're friends with or you follow your neighbor, you can probably see a picture that they've posted online that you never would have seen them in that light otherwise. Suddenly, there are people that are not celebrities, that are not supermodels, that you are seeing daily, constantly in your feed, that are just what you would consider to be regular people who you think look amazing and you're upset that you don't look like them. Because now it's not I'm comparing myself to a celebrity. It's like I'm comparing myself to the girl that makes my coffee at the cafe. Why don't I look like that? Or I'm comparing myself to this person at the gym. Why don't I look like that? The opportunities to compare bodies and faces, I feel like faces is its whole other topic, but the opportunity to compare yourself to other people's bodies is unlike anything we've ever seen before. It's constantly on our minds.
Well, we're dealing with two sets of people, or at least in my mind, I'm thinking of the individual who has no clue that they're comparing themselves to an unrealistic expectation of what that person looks like, right? Because they're not, I mean, yes, there's the issue that they're comparing themselves to someone else, which in and of itself is another separate topic, but they're comparing themselves to what they think someone else actually looks like, and they don't realize. Then you have, on the flip side of the coin, you have sets of people who are aware that this is the game, and they feel like they need to play it. And if they don't play it, they're basically not a functioning member of society because they're going to be behind the curve as far as looking a certain way. So you have people who are unaware and have delusional thoughts as far as what other people look like, regardless of the fact that they're comparing themselves to someone else. Again, separate issue. And then you have individuals who are well aware and are playing the game. Really tricky place.
So let's talk about what are you talking about playing the game? Because there are plenty of people who could be listening to this who have no idea what that means. Nobody posts their bad pictures on the internet. I consider myself to be a pretty transparent person. If I take a picture of myself and I see it and I go, ugh, I'm not going to post that picture. I'm going to post pictures where I think I look good, or I think I look attractive or fit or whatever. Everybody does the exact same thing. And there are also people who take this to the next level with lighting and angles. And then there are people who take it to an even bigger level with actually altering their photos, whether that's via a filter, like an Instagram filter or a Snapchat filter, or something even more insidious like Photoshop or Facetune, which is an app. You could literally change everything about yourself with this $2 app using just your finger and your phone. It's fairly indetectable. Like, to the naked eye on a quick scroll, you wouldn't just sit there and be like, oh, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake. But a lot of these photos are edited and altered and airbrushed, and pores are made to look smoother, and lumps and bumps on skin are smoothed out to look like they're not there, and they're being uploaded as though they are reality, and they're not reality. So not only are you comparing yourself to everybody you see on the internet, whether you intend to or not, you can be conscious of this and it can still creep up on you. A lot of times they're not even realistic expectations, just based on how the photo was taken or edited. Then you add to this the fact that there's this whole new wave of influencers, which I loathe the term, but there's this whole new wave of influencers, and somebody could be an influencer in any sphere. For the sake of this podcast, let's talk about fitness influencers or vegan influencers. There's this whole horde of people that if you are a successful influencer, that is your full-time job. You are getting paid brand deals from people to post pictures. You maybe have other things set up like Patreons or OnlyFans or whatever. That's your job. You cannot compare yourself to people whose job it is to exercise. It's their job to work out. It's their job to eat well. It's their job to make sure everything they post on the internet looks goddamned flawless. Now we're right back to where we started at the beginning, where you wouldn't compare yourself to Angelina Jolie, right? It's her freaking job to be Angelina Jolie, and you know that. Deep down, you know that. But somehow we have convinced ourselves that this slew of influencers and wannabe influencers, like who are trying to make it as an influencer, we're forgetting it's also now their job. That's their job to look good. It's probably not your job to look good. Maybe you're a bank teller. Maybe you're the barista at the cafe. Maybe you have 5 kids at home. If it was your job to look good and exercise and eat right 24/7, you would probably do that if that's how you put food on the table for your family. But if it's not, how could you possibly be expected to do that?
Okay, well, now we have the issue where a lot of these influencers, how much I love that word, come and bring to the table a lot of good information with the content that they put out there, and you rely on said content, whether it's recipes or who knows, new products that you haven't been exposed to, food products, fitness products, whatever. Like, this is where you get your information from. How do you continue to get your information from these sources without letting the way that they're putting themselves out there as brand ambassadors or public facing people, just whatever, just like they're the people that are out there that you rely upon, but you obviously don't want to be impacted by an impossible standard because it's not even what they look like in real life?
Well, one, I think you have to be really conscious of it. So many of us just started using social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. We started using it to stay in touch with our friends and family, or maybe just for fun, to casually show what we're up to. And then over time, it just morphed and evolved and became what I think is largely just a pretty toxic place for a lot of people. I mean, I've seen what it's done to a lot of people's mental health, but the first step is just being aware that that's what you're doing. You're comparing yourself to people that live in a way that you can't. And it's also important to note, we're talking about how amazing these people look. There are a lot of people who do try to make it as an influencer and they don't. This is still, we're looking at like the 1% of people in terms of like their looks. We're literally looking at like the most beautiful people. Let's call it what it is. That's what the algorithm pushes. That's what becomes the most popular. There was actually some like scandal that came out recently about, maybe it wasn't that recently, about TikTok, which is an app. I don't use that. I've not used TikTok. That literally proved that the algorithm just pushed pretty people. Like, if you weren't a pretty person, whatever standards they were using for that, they didn't promote your stuff. But if you were a good-looking person, they just pumped that out to everybody, which you're looking at the 1%, but it's easy to feel like everybody's the 1% but you. So you have to be mindful of the fact that that is just not the truth. On the flip side, I guarantee you there's somebody looking at you thinking the same damn thing. I think we forget that. But it's true.
Okay. Well, we know that, as the saying goes, try not to or should not to or don't compare yourself to others. However, here you are needing some basis of comparison or just knowing you want to make a change, right? You feel you look a certain way and you want to look different than how you do right now. What do? How do you do that and not start to pick yourself apart? And how do you get through making that change in a way that doesn't make you start to feel bad about where you're at now or where you've been as far as how you see yourself, right? Because I feel that is a challenge when it's time to make a change and work on your own physique, and it can almost stop you dead in your tracks before you even start or derail you as you're trying to make a change.
Yeah, so this is a great question. Even if you're not directly comparing yourself to somebody else, somewhere in your brain is likely some ideal. You have a look that you want. There's an ideal in your brain that you would like to achieve, and you're not there, and you feel bad about it for some reason. The first thing is you have to, and this was like the biggest kind of question, the biggest series of questions on that thread that we had in the Facebook group, was about identifying what is realistic. What is realistic for you? For you at your current age, at your current station in life, fitness, size. Did you grow up really skinny? Have you just recently lost 100 pounds? There's so many. Did you just have kids? There's so many different factors that are going to change what is and isn't realistic for you. And I find that most people have a goal in their head that is, it's not always like incredible. I mean, every once in a while you meet somebody where you're just like, that is not in the cards for you, my friend. Most of the time I find people they've just pushed it a little bit past what is going to come easily to them. I don't want to say it's not realistic. Like, could somebody achieve some of these things? Yes. Is it worth it for them? Don't know. They would have to tell you that. But I think you really need to assess, is this a realistic goal for me? And in our last podcast, I think it was our last podcast, we talked about body fat percentage. Or was that the one before that?
Maybe the one before that.
We talked about body fat percentage and what is or isn't sort of realistic or maintainable for both men and women. So if you haven't checked that one out, I would definitely check that one out to at least get an idea of what might be possible for you in terms of body fat percentage and what that looks like. But there are other factors that come into play. Often weight is a huge one that people have, this ideal in their mind. They have their ideal weight in their mind. A lot of times I think that it's lower than what somebody probably should be maintaining. I don't know if it's the same with the dudes. What do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Lower than what they should be maintaining?
Oh, whether it's lower than they should be maintaining,
Yeah.
or I think it depends on the person. I think with men, it swings in both directions. They want to maintain a certain upper level or a certain lower level. I've been personally on both sides of the spectrum, meaning, oh, I need to weigh 185, or I want to weigh 220, for example. Any less than it's no good, any more and it's bad.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So for women, usually they have a weight in mind, and it's almost always on the low side. It's almost always like too low, in my opinion, to maintain, especially if they're active. Like a lot of times people are thinking of like their high school weight, their fighting weight, but like a weight from high school that they were probably not very well muscled in high school, and they might be now, and that's going to totally change the number on the scale. But if they're still trying to chase this number on the scale, there's just going to be a constant push-pull of trying to reach this number that is probably pretty arbitrary and likely not realistic. I'm shocked that the happy, healthy weight for myself is 140. When I was younger, back when Giacomo and I met, I thought that number was going to be 125. I step on stage at 125 now, and I look sickly in person at 125. But if you had tried to tell me 15 years ago, like, no, hun, it's 140. 140 is your magic number, I would have been terrified. I would have been like, no, that's not what I want. But you live, you learn. And sometimes you have to see that goal to realize that's not what you actually want.
What I'm hearing is that there are ways to lessen your potential as far as changing your body and getting to where you want to be when you start.
What do you mean lessen your potential?
Well, put it this way. You can change your body when you have more lean body mass on your frame. And you have to do certain things to get more lean body mass, correct? Okay. Well, if you get hung up on, say, weight or fitting into a certain set of clothes from, like, say, high school or from when you were this weight.
I get it. Okay, now I know what you mean by lessen your potential. Sometimes it takes me a while, guys, to follow where Giacomo's trying to go, and I have to ask questions to make sure that we get there.
I love questions. Stick with me. I'll be here all day. But
they must hear me interrupt you all the time, like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? That's probably a me problem, but I get it now. If you limit yourself, you're limiting yourself by setting a particular goal weight or like a certain set of clothes. So again, the number one question in this thread was like, I want to know what's realistic for me. Like, what should I be shooting for? It's an impossible question. And I think that's why we were so stumped for a few days. It's an impossible question to answer on a podcast that, all different kinds of people are going to listen to, because the answer to that is going to be different for everybody. Like a big one was like, what can I realistically achieve at a certain age or above a certain age? And even that depends on so many factors. Like, are you just starting training at 45 years old? Are you 45 or 50 years old and you've been training since you were 17? Those two people are going to have completely different things that they are likely to be able to achieve in their older age. Of course, you can make progress in your 40s, 50s, 60s. We've seen people make progress in their 70s. The question is, well, how much progress can I make? And I think that it's important to remember that you're never going to feel like you're done.
Mm-hmm. You're reminding me of what I was thinking about earlier in our conversation that I completely forgot and spaced out on for a minute there. Again, my gripe with the fitness industry in general is that it is this never-ending revolving machine that wants to keep you in it. And the thought is to promote yo-yo dieting and to promote rapid transformations, which there's some merit to it, I guess. Get motivated about making a fast change. So I don't want to shame the fact that we do that in this industry, because I think it's encouraging. But when that becomes the theme and you're constantly trying to push for a super fast change, one, your expectation is going to be unrealistic, and two, you're going to sell yourself short, and I think that's a recipe for disaster. And I'm going to keep saying this time and time again because some things are just worth repeating ad nauseum. 5 years. That's the goal. Whatever you think you want to look like in a year, that's what you're going to look like in 5 years if you keep putting the work in.
Interesting little aside there. I see how what I said made you think of that, but that's not quite what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is that you're never going to feel like you're done. You don't wake up one day and look at a checklist on your wall that says like achieved physique goal and you just check it off and you're like, and we're done now. That goalpost moves constantly. It constantly is moving, and that's okay. That's part of it. Part of being really into fitness and physique is that feeling of like never being quite satisfied. That's a part of this. And if you learn to embrace that and enjoy that, you're going to have a much better time. Because if you're just constantly trying to scratch an itch that is never gonna not be itchy, you're gonna have a really bad time. To the point about like what is realistic for age, like what can I achieve at my age? My recommendation for everybody would be to set a small realistic goal first. Something that you're almost certain that you could achieve. Reach that. Set another small realistic goal from there. Reach that. It's such a better plan of action than saying, okay, I want to look like Nimai Delgado. Nobody looks like Nimai Delgado except Nimai. But if you say, I want to increase my bench press by 10 pounds, that's a small achievable goal. You can do that and it's going to build your chest. If you say, I want to lose 2% body fat from where I am right now, you can achieve that. And if you still feel good and if you still have energy, then you could say, okay, I want to lose another 2% body fat, and then do that. And if you do it slow enough and mindfully enough, you should notice when things start to not go really well, when you start feeling low energy, when your sleep starts to get interrupted, when your libido starts to fall off a cliff, or you start having really food-focused thoughts. You're probably at that place where if you take it any further, the cost might outweigh the benefit for you. And that would be what is realistic for you right now.
You mentioned this a couple times on this episode already. Can you talk more to your point about the risks and the cost involved?
Well, it depends on what people's goal is, but when we're talking about body image as the issue, most people, the things that they're feeling is they're feeling like they're not muscular enough and they're not lean enough. What do we all want? We all want more muscle. We all want to be leaner. So when you're struggling with a bad body image day, oftentimes that's what you're going to be feeling. You don't have enough muscle and you have too much body fat. One or the other, or a combination of both. Or maybe it's like a body part focused insecurity. Yeah, I don't like the way my thighs look or my stomach looks or whatever. But regardless, even in those cases, it's usually I have too much body fat on my blank. I mean, I feel like we've talked about the costs of getting lean so many times on podcasts that it almost feels like beating a dead horse in some ways. In order to get really lean, there are tremendous costs that come with it. There's intense hunger. There's a lot of food focus. Your risk of binge eating goes up. Your sleep is disturbed. Your sex hormones, and I don't just mean your libido, but your actual like estrogen and testosterone levels start to do weird things. Your cortisol increases. You have to turn down social events left and right. You might feel disconnected from your family. The longer you do this, you might experience even worse stuff like your skin getting bad or your hair falling out. You might lose your period. Your bones might start becoming more brittle and you might be losing calcium. Like, it is not all sunshine and rainbows to be shredded. There are a lot of downsides. You might be like, well, some people are shredded all the time. That's true. Some people are shredded all the time. Some people have really great genetics. Some people, again, literally get paid to do this for a living. Some people take performance enhancing drugs that mitigate a lot of those costs that I just mentioned. And it's important to just be aware of all of those things. And some people, again, it's worth mentioning, they are lean all the time for like several years, and then all of their health just goes to shit and they cannot stay lean. And not only can they just not stay shredded, but they end up needing to gain 30, 40, 50 pounds just to get their health back. And most people, I think, would argue, I don't want to gain 40 or 50 pounds to get my health back. I'd rather just maintain 10 or 15 pounds above where my health is garbage.
But that's such a hard pill to sell, because it makes a lot more sense to get excited about something and to maintain something that is not necessarily sustainable for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And then you're looking at other individuals that are, of course, only going to show their pictures from those several years they were super fit. You won't see what they need to do afterwards to get themselves back to a healthy level. Another point that I want to add to on this topic is speaking to the fact that cost of, while you're focused on getting leaner, for example, and your systems are compromised, your internal mechanisms are compromised, what do you think that's going to do to your psyche and your ability to be able to see how you actually look? Time and time again, you're usually not able to see what you've accomplished until 6 months after the fact.
Absolutely. I was thinking about this before we started recording this, about how everybody thinks the fitter you are, the better your body image is. And somebody did comment this in the Facebook group. If you're in great shape, objectively, if you're in great shape and you were to tell your close friend or a family member, like, I just feel like so bloated today and I just feel like I blah, blah, blah. And your family is just like, oh, shut up. You look fantastic. No one wants to hear it from you. It sucks. It absolutely sucks that if you're in good shape, people think you can't be having poor body image. But I think to some of my lowest times of body image, like when my body image is the worst, is when I objectively look the best. Like, well, I should say subjectively, I guess, for competitions. The leaner I get, the more my body image suffers. And I see this in other clients too, because it's the more you focus on it, right? That's what I think.
I think that's part of it.
The more you focus on your physique, the more nitpicky you get about it not being where it wants to be. And of course, the pressure of a deadline, of standing on a stage basically naked in front of a crowd, that definitely doesn't help. But I actually feel like I have better body image in the off season than I have when I'm really lean and like really muscular and looking super fit. It does mess with your psyche. It totally messes with your psyche. I mean, it also messes with your psyche to get in really good shape and then not be able to maintain that and have to take a step back. Like, nobody should be maintaining their stage leanness, first of all. But once you've seen yourself stage lean, you'll always know that that's a possibility. And something in the back of your mind will always be kind of upset with you for not looking like that today. It sucks. But I don't know anybody that doesn't experience this. I don't know a single person that does not experience this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what more to say on the topic other than the fact that I've been focused on this stuff since 1994. And even as the last time I changed my body real fast was last year. And I still, again, I could not see the fact that I actually looked a certain way that wasn't half bad.
Oh yeah, Giacomo was really lean last year.
Yeah, and I mean, I knew I was lean, but I didn't know if I actually looked all right. And then 6 months later, I was like, damn, I looked more than all right. Like, I looked like what I wanted to look like, and I was going to do just fine had I kept going.
Yep.
So it's kind of crazy how your body messes with you. I think it's easy to blame how you think and blame your mind for playing tricks on you or you not being able to overcome these thoughts. But I think it's important to remember that you're in a compromised position when you're not nourishing yourself by eating enough and you're stressing yourself out more by forcing your body to take itself out of a state of balance, even though it's for the right reasons and it's a positive thing and you're making a change, it's something that you enjoy. Your system is in a compromised state, and so it's going to cloud your judgment. It's going to cloud the way that you think, and it's not something that is necessarily not possible to understand after the fact. I mean, you can reason with yourself all you'd like, but I think you just kind of have to admit that, throw your hands up in the air and be like, all right, well, I'm going to have to be a little gentle with myself right now because I know that I'm not going to be able to think clearly about what I actually look like.
Well, I mean, what you're describing is body dysmorphia. And I think that in the fitness community, I don't even want to say the industry, but like if you are into training and you're into improving your physique, there is a level of body dysmorphia that it's like a goddamn current through this community. Like everybody has it a little bit. Some people have it a lot. I think that it's important to recognize that, like, if you are seeing yourself entirely differently than the way other people are seeing you, you should probably consider the fact that there may be some body dysmorphia going on. And, you know, that's a real diagnosable thing. And if you think you have it, you should try to get treatment for it because it's unbearable. I think everybody in the fitness community has a touch of it. I think everybody has a touch of it. Like I said, some people have it to a crippling degree. Sometimes it's focused on your whole body. Sometimes it's focused on just one particular body part. Example, I see this a lot in right now, currently, with, you know, beauty standards being what they are right now, which is a whole other topic. There's no way we're going to be able to cover this in one podcast. You know, there's women who just think their butts aren't big enough, or they think their lips aren't big enough. Holy Lord, is that a thing? And they just, you know, their butt is fine and their lips are fine, but they just keep going and getting more and more work done on their butt or on their lips until eventually they don't look like a human being anymore and they still don't feel like they're big enough. Body dysmorphia can be like that. It can be like that, but maybe you don't go get surgery done. Maybe you just train your glutes like absolutely crazy. Or if you're a guy, you train your biceps or your chest like absolutely crazy because you think it's tiny and weak, or your calves. This is a big one for guys too. It could be your whole body where like everybody else thinks you look lean and fit, but all you can see is a fatty McFatterson. And that's literally how you're talking to yourself in your mind. I'm not saying that to poke fun at anyone that carries more body fat. I'm saying, like, if you are saying these words to yourself in your mind and everybody around you is like, you know, you look really good, probably go talk to somebody. You might have some strong body dysmorphia going on. And unfortunately, it's not the kind of thing we can just throw a few practical tips out on a podcast and call it a day. Like, it's a real issue. And it's also important to be kind to other people that are experiencing something like this, because telling them, oh, shut up, you look amazing and no one wants to hear it from you, that's not helpful. They're having a problem. They're literally looking at themselves through like funhouse goggles, and you talking to them like they're a crazy person is not very compassionate either.
It's invalidating, and it's hard to accept comments on your body when you're literally talking to someone about how you're struggling with how you feel about your own body. The last thing you want to hear is someone else thinking they're trying to talk you up or projecting their own insecurities or their own judgments about body image on you, unintentionally perhaps even, or just making comments on you when really you're looking for support and trying to figure out how to handle the dysmorphic thoughts that unfortunately do sort of come with the territory. And sometimes to a great degree and sometimes a little bit. Now, I kind of want to pivot here.
Wait, I want to add to that what you just
Okay.
said. I want to give the flip side of this, right? Because I was obese for a long time. And I remember when I would be hanging out with my friends who I considered to be, you know, thin, and they would be complaining about how they felt fat. So here I am sitting there, you know, well over 200 pounds while my 110-pound friend is complaining that they think they're fat. And in my head, I'd be like, well, that's a shitty thing to say in front of me, right? Like, if you think you're fat, what must you think of me? Like, I remember feeling that way, and that, I think there's tons of validity to that. But now that I've also been on the other side of it, I would never say something like that really to anybody, because I wouldn't talk to people about that anyway, other than like very close friends or family. But I certainly wouldn't do that to my friends that I know are struggling with being larger than they want to be. I would just never do that. Now that I've been on this side of it, I get it. Somebody who is thin or even very lean saying that they feel fat or they feel bloated or whatever, it's really just about that person. It really is just about that person. I'm sure they don't think any less of you. it's their own issue. I don't know. I've just been on both sides of it, and I actually feel for people on both sides of that.
Oh no, I get it. There are some times where you are not even mentioning how you feel about your body and you're expected to look a certain way or think a certain way about yourself because you're a fitness professional or because you're a person who loves to lift or a person who likes to work on your physique. So people just automatically think it's an invitation to start talking to you about the way that you look.
Oh God. Yep.
I have dealt with this my entire life, ever since I was a kid. The entire culture that I grew up around, from friends to family to strangers, everyone was obsessed with the way that they looked and obsessed with being beautiful and obsessed with, honestly, with being skinny, believe it or not. And I struggled with that. I mean, I definitely went down that rabbit hole into a dark place where I felt like, okay, well, I want to look lean and muscular, but I also need to be skinny because people kept telling me, oh, you know, you look good when you look like this, or you know, you need to be super lean, and that's like what I prefer people look like. And so I just wound up absorbing a lot of that growing up, just in the kind of, just like with the people that I was surrounded by and that I eventually surrounded myself with. And you know, some of that stuff I still feel to this day, honestly. So it's challenging. It's just really challenging.
Yeah, definitely if you're somebody who's into sports or into lifting, people feel like that is an invitation to comment on your body. And I guarantee you that it's like even worse when you're a woman. I guarantee it. The number of people that have come up to me to tell me not just good things about my body, by the way, not like, wow, you look really good, but also like, oh, remember Frankie at the gym? Oh, I see you are more fat now. I was like, yep, I am more fat now.
We'll give Frankie a pass because there's a little bit of a language barrier there.
And he's like 70 something.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't wrong. I was more fat then because I had just finished competing and I had to get some body fat back on my body.
Yeah.
But yeah, people will just tell you their thoughts, and I am so against anybody telling anybody what they think about their body like it's any of their business. Good, bad, ugly, anything in between. Just don't comment on people's bodies.
Give me all of your thoughts. I am the body positivity specialist, so I can hear it all and we could talk about my body. Not quite. It doesn't quite work like that, but I get where people are coming from and I understand. So where I wanted and still do want to pivot is to how you're able to focus on your physique without dealing with the dysmorphic thoughts. In other words, when you need to make a change, you really do need to pay attention to how you're changing week to week, sometimes even.
So this was one of the questions, was tips for getting yourself or your clients in a place to better see their own progress. Which is a great question. If it's my clients and I can tell that they're struggling with their body image, there's a few things I do. One, we don't take pictures. I will let them go a month without taking pictures rather than doing them every week. Or we'll just go based off, or we'll just do pictures and we won't do weight and measurements. One or the other. And I tell my clients, don't look at the pictures. This is not for you to look at. This is for me to look at. These are mine so that I can make the appropriate changes for you. And then if and when I do see progress and I can tell that the client does not believe me, when I'm like, oh, this is changing or this is changing, I will make before and after shots side by side, sometimes on specific body parts, like zoom right into the body part and show them this was 4 months ago. This is today. Do you see the difference? I make sure that those pictures are pretty undeniable. Like, you can clearly see the progress in between them. If it's myself, well, when I'm going through a cutting phase, I work with a coach for this exact reason. I don't think anybody should be prepping for a bodybuilding show without a coach. I can't stress that enough. You will make yourself insane and you are very likely to hurt yourself.
You'll make the wrong moves, body image aside.
But I mean, how can you ask somebody to accurately assess their own physique? Mm-hmm. If what I just said is true, that everybody has at least a touch of body dysmorphia in this community, how could you possibly accurately assess yourself? And when you're getting ready for a show, that is not just a touch anymore. That dial turns like all the way up, it seems.
Way up.
I take pictures for my coach and I just send them to him. and I don't look at them. If I think I'm not going to like what I see, I'm not going to look at them. I'm just going to send them off. I do not agonize in front of the mirror. When I was a newer bodybuilder, I did that. I would stand in front of the mirror for a long time. I would turn and flex and do all these poses and try to see all this stuff in the mirror. And I don't do that anymore. It's called body checking, and it's actually a huge sign of body dysmorphia. I don't do that anymore. Even if part of me kind of wants to do that, I'm not doing ab checks. I'm not, unless it's peak week and you literally have to see what you're doing hour to hour, I'm not doing that. And I highly recommend against that. And if I'm having a bad body image day, or if my clients are, I'm not telling them to go to the gym in a crop top and leggings. Like, I'm going in sweatpants and a sweatshirt. I'm not there to look pretty. I'm there to get the job done. And to me, that has made a huge difference, because when I was younger, every time I showed up at the gym, it felt like an opportunity to show my stuff, right? Show how strong I was, show how good I looked. But that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself for no reason. I mean, most of the time remember that? No, you don't, because you don't remember anything about television. Mm-hmm. That episode of How I Met Your Mother, when all the girls at the gym are super cute and Robin is just a mess.
Vaguely.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like that half of the time that I'm at the gym. Because even I don't want to see my damn body every day. It's not healthy to just stare at your body all the time. That's weird.
Yeah, it is weird. And a coach is going to be somewhat subjective, because they're going to want to tell you that you're making progress, but they'll be able to look at you mostly in an objective fashion. They're used to looking at bodies, and they're used to talking to people about the changes they see and why they see them when they look at your side-by-side pics. There's a way to speak to somebody to make them aware of the changes without being unnecessarily descriptive about the differences. Mm-hmm. And each client is different. Some clients you will show a side-by-side and do a close-up. Right. Other clients that might be triggering to them. Mm-hmm. You might need to have a discussion with them instead, and you'll be able to sort of feel it out with each different person. So having a coach is invaluable. I mean, just for example, you can say to somebody, "Oh, your ass grew," or "your ass shrank." You would never say that to somebody, right? But your friend on the street might say that to you, mm-hmm. right? Or yeah. That might be your self-talk for whatever reason, and that's whatever. But when you work with a professional, they'll say, "Okay, well, I can see some lines are different here, and I can see that the midsection area is changing," for example. And you can be descriptive in a way that doesn't actually cause that person to start
questioning their self-worth
and start to pick apart and overanalyze their physique. They'll just trust that you can see something different from point A to point B. And then eventually they have the confidence to look at it themselves when they're ready to. And
in hindsight.
Mm-hmm. And then they're like, "Oh, that's true. Yeah, I see." And they'll see it in their own light. And that, to me, is progress. And that's a healthy way to go about it.
So the next big question is about realistic body expectations after having kids.
Where do we even begin with this one?
Everybody is different. Man, that must feel like such a cop-out to you guys at this point when we sit here and say, well, it depends. Everybody's different. It is. Everybody's different. Some people bounce right back after pregnancy like nothing changed. And some people's bodies don't. It depends on so many factors. One of the biggest factors, which I guess I'm going to tie these two together because they are kind of similar in some way. A lot of people asked about loose skin when you've lost a lot of weight and how that affects your body image. And I could do an entire damn episode about this because I experienced it. And a lot of people after they give birth, obviously, many people have loose skin on their stomach, right? So a huge part of what realistic body expectations can you have after having kids or after losing massive amount of weight depends on the quality of your skin. Because some people have very collagen-y, eating collagen does not give you collagen, heads up, but they have very elasticy skin and their skin just bounces right back. Mm-hmm. Some people don't even get a stretch mark. What? And then other people's skin turns into crepe paper. And then everything in between. I think that is a huge part of the body expectations. Because if you have loose skin, there is nothing you can do about it. And that is the hardest thing for me to say to anybody because I know that pain. I have lived that pain and felt that pain of God damn it, I just changed my whole life. I just changed my whole body and you can't even tell because I just have loose skin here and here and here and here. And there are no creams. There are no potions. There are no magic wands. I mean, that literally, people try to sell you little wands that you can wand over your loose skin that are going to fix it. Time can improve it. And that's a huge thing. My loose skin improved dramatically over 10 years, but it never went away. The only thing that can fix it are cosmetic procedures. So things like certain laser therapies can have a marginal difference. And then, of course, larger surgeries like removing the skin altogether, which is what I had done on my stomach and my chest 2 years ago. I still have loose skin. I still have it on my arms. I still have it on my legs. And after undergoing the procedures of getting the loose skin removed where I did, I don't think I'll get more procedures. I don't think that it changed my quality of life that much to justify doing it again. But for some people who have a lot more loose skin, getting those surgeries can absolutely change their outlooks. And some people get this after massive weight loss. Some people get it after a pregnancy that leaves them with way more loose skin than they expected. Also, with pregnancy, and if somebody was obese, this can be true as well. You can get diastasis recti, which is when the abdominal muscles actually kind of split in the center. They're not going to go back together. The doctors can also kind of stitch this back together for both aesthetic and health reasons, because you don't want that gap in your abs. If you can avoid it, it can cause hernias and things like that. But with pregnancy, one of the things that might change that cannot be undone is that the hips open up to make way for birth. Some women, it's more visibly obvious than others. But that's a change that can happen to your bodies that might not change back. That said, the current beauty standard is definitely the wider hip look. There are people spending tons and tons of money to go get more hip and more butt and more thigh. So for all my pear-shaped ladies out there that for years and years that has been like the down, they say, like, oh, I'm pear-shaped and I don't want to be pear-shaped. Like, every single look comes and goes in and out of fashion, and now is your moment, ladies, because everybody wants that at the moment. But yeah, realistic expectations after kids. Giacomo brought up a good point this morning. Yes, the woman who gives birth, her body is changed dramatically. Then both of the parents post-birth, once the kiddo is alive, both parents' lifestyles are going to change, and what they were able to do in terms of fitness and nutrition before the baby was born might be much, much, much harder afterwards. And both people's bodies can change.
Yeah. And I think, well, honestly, it kind of irritates me that we almost poke fun of and shame the other parent for needing to have a certain kind of body. Or like, oh, you have a parent body now, for example, because...
Parent body? Do you mean dad bod?
I mean dad bod. Yeah, I get it. Maybe I should have a sense of humor, but I also feel like it belittles the fact that both parents involved, if there's two parents involved, the lifestyle has to change. And yes, one literally goes through the ringer, like your body has changed. So you are at a far bigger disadvantage as far as how long it takes you to bounce back. And there are actual physical changes to your body. However, like Danny was saying, there is a period of time after the fact where you are tethered to your newborn and your toddler, and even when you're not so tethered to them, how do you get back to your habits and routine? And I think it's different for everybody, but I think it affects both parents, essentially.
It does affect both parents. And here it's not so much about what is realistic for your body as much as what is realistic for your life. Mm-hmm. Now that the baby is born, like maybe you used to be able to train 6 days a week, and now you're lucky if you can squeeze in 3. Your expectations for your body might need to change just because of that. But I do believe that women's bodies can make a tremendous comeback post-baby, and I've seen it a million times. What the point that I was trying to make is that there are some things that may change that may not be able to change back, like the skin or the hip spread, or your breasts are probably going to change dramatically, and sans surgery, it's unlikely they're just going to go back to what they were before, unless you're very lucky, which some people are. It's important. Again, I can't help but bring this back to the internet and social media and how many moms kind of turn getting their pre-baby body back into this like almost competition or this feat that they post online, and it becomes a big thing. And then you're like, well, look at that mom. She was able to do it. Why can't I do it? That mom was the exception. If she was able to completely bounce back in 8 weeks, that was the exception. This extends into parenting too. Good Lord. When we had the kids, boy, did I realize like the mom shaming that goes on is insane. Or the parent shaming, I guess I should say. Yes, be very wary as your body goes through these changes. This isn't something you've dealt with your whole life, being pregnant and giving birth. You're pregnant maybe for the first or second or third time or whatever, and you're probably looking for other people in the community to connect with who are also pregnant, going through the same things. So again, it's really easy to start playing that comparison game right then and there. Again, even if you haven't been doing it for a very long time.
Yeah, I think in general, whether you've given birth or not, just adding to this topic, when you have a lifestyle shift like that you think you have your hands on, that you think you can control, but you really can't, that it can be hard to shift and pivot and change the way you do things and make realistic expectations. But the truth is that you can still make a ton of progress as long as you're realistic with yourself, with what you can do while you're taking on different responsibilities.
We're not even halfway through what we'd like to talk about today, so I think we are going to wrap this one up, do a second podcast.
You can't see me, but I have my hands, my finger.
He's doing the cut sign.
On my neck.
He's tapping out.
Yep.
He's tapping out for this one. Anyway, we hope that you enjoyed this topic. If you have any, we're not going to record the second part today, so if you have anything that you want to know that pertains to this discussion, please come join our Muscles by Brussels Facebook group. Find the thread. It's a post that I made, and just comment on it. We're touching, we might not be able to dive deep into every single thing that people posted, but we are going to touch on every single person's question or comment. We really like this discussion, and we would love to have you be a part of it. There might be a gap between this podcast and the next podcast because we're going to be recording a podcast with Robert Cheek is going to be our next one. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to be chatting about other than his new upcoming book, which should be coming out in June.
Exciting stuff.
So we'll definitely talk about that, but we will talk about something else as well. And then the next body image episode will be out right after that one. So episode 79, keep your eyes open for that. And if you want to hear us talk to Robert Cheek next week or in 2 weeks, definitely tune in for that as well.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode. What's the matter?
You just always scream when you start doing it.
I'm trying to sound excited.
Sound excited. Go ahead.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. No good?
Just do it the way you did it. Just do it the regular way. Just do it your regular way.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins, Muscles by Brussels Radio. Feel free to stay in touch with us. Tune in at Vegan Proteins, at Muscles by Brussels on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, in our Muscles by Brussels group. Shoot us an email at veganproteins@gmail.com with any questions you have. Once again, my name's Giacomo.
And I'm Danny.
And we'll speak to you soon.
With a vision blue.